And welcome back to the Manc Entrepreneur YouTube channel. And we have a sort of a special episode for you today. We are live, and I'm joined by Rich over in Canada. Thank you for joining me, mate. How are you?
Canada.
Canada? Did I say Canada?
You said
Canada. Friday.
It is cold here. I will give you that. At least cold is right.
Not got like 6 foot of snow outside, no?
No.
I mean, I'm physically here in Manchester, but my mind is in Canada for some reason.
It's like,
so Richard,
it's like 15 degrees. Florida. Yeah, it's 15 degrees Celsius, you know? It's cold.
I don't know where that came from. That's so unusual.
I was almost going to wear a jacket for this one. Because
I've got a Blue Jays jacket you could borrow.
Probably won't fit me. No.
Anyway,
and we're already off to something.
We're off topic already. So yeah, you've got the feel for how this video is going to go. But as you can tell, hopefully by the title, I get asked this question quite frequently, to be honest. And I got an email that came in. I'm going to read the email out, and I also got asked this twice at a recent meetup here in Manchester. So the email was from a lady called Mia. An email said, thank you so much for sharing your experience with the sellers. I appreciate it. It's very helpful. I saw one of your videos today, and I was wondering, how do you pay taxes in the USA? I've started selling on Amazon FBA USA a few weeks ago, and I am based here in the UK. I haven't done anything regarding taxes in the USA yet, and I'm not making a lot of sales, although it does look promising for the future. So I want to make sure I arrange all of this. How are you supposed to pay taxes in the UK and the USA? Will I be better off just moving out to the USA? Best regards, Mia. So Mia, thank you for your email. And like I said, this is a question which I get asked quite a lot. And I always sort of say the same thing, whether this is right or wrong. I always sort of pre-state that I am not a tax professional. I'm not an accountant. I am by no means giving anybody legal or financial advice that could therefore make me liable. So I'm gonna get that out there. Richard, I'm pretty sure you're none of those things.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw out all kinds of information, but I'll get a little bit into.
Yeah, if you get sued, it's your own fault. Yeah. Ultimately, joking apart, when running a business, ultimately tax liabilities, just like any other legal liabilities, fall on you as the business owner. With that said, I in the past have always said to people, if you're using Amazon FBA USA, they will basically contact you to provide certain sort of tax information. So when you've set up your business, so you just like your company number, a VAT number, if you're VAT registered and all this sort of stuff. And then if you get to a certain point, I imagine a certain number of sales, they then may start asking for you to fill in certain forms. USA forms like to have lots of letters and numbers in them, like an ICO 52 or FDB 97, tax forms and all this sort of stuff. And I've always said, listen, like, don't let it stop you from selling. Get started, and if that issue arises, then Amazon will basically let you know. Amazon will get told by the government or whoever to find out more information from you. That's how I've basically left it, and that's how a lot of people that I know who sell on FBA in the USA are running it. But to give some more insight, that's why I very kindly asked Richard, who is not based in Canada, he's in fact based in Florida, to join me today to sort of shed a little bit more light on how tax sort of works in the USA, because it is very different to how it works here in the UK, and also maybe just get some insight, because Richard, I know you used to sell all over the world on eBay and Amazon. So maybe you could share a little bit of an insight into how you sort of dealt with tax issues. Granted, it would have been going the other way, but still, yeah. Maybe start off by giving us a rundown of tax in the USA.
Okay, so let's take a look at the actual facts of how taxes work in the United States. Now, what we're talking about when it comes to Amazon FBA, we're talking about sales taxes, which would be more or less equivalent to your VAT taxes in Europe or the UK. If you've ever traveled to the US, you probably have noticed you walk into a store, there's an item for sale for $100, and you go to the cash register and they charge you $107 or something like that, because virtually in every store in the US, all prices are marked without sales tax included. Why that is, there's probably 100 million different reasons. The most likely reason simply is it's easier for companies to deal with the various different taxations, sales taxes that are required. And this is where it gets interesting. In the United States, unlike in the UK, and I believe also this to apply to most of other European countries, the federal government doesn't deal with sales tax. It's not, they don't care. It's not their deal. It's a state level deal. So there is no such thing as a federal agency that collects sales tax. And that is what a lot of this is all about. You know, because there's not one, everything falls onto the states. Well, based on the U.S. Constitution, states have these rights. And so it becomes a state right issue. And so where now this transforms into more difficulty is that if you are domiciled in a state, let's say me in Florida, and I run a business from Florida, and I sell products in Florida, I must collect sales tax if I sell to a Florida address, because that is the legal requirement. But when I sell across the state line, that's when it gets murky, because based on a Supreme Court decision involving Quill, and you know what, I was going to look it up real quick. It's almost 20 years ago. Which is a large office supply company. They fought a sales tax issue, but other states were suing them to collect sales tax in their state, and they said no, we don't have to, because there's under the Constitution the e-commerce clause and some other, whatever, that's not required, and the Supreme Court agreed with them. So since that decision, it's been, well, if you sell outside the state of that you're domiciled in, which means you have nexus in, that they have a building, an office, something physical, you don't have to worry about collecting tax, because the other states have no legal method to enforce that tax collection. And that is where the Amazon FBA thing starts to get interesting. Because previously, prior to Amazon FBA, most people had one warehouse in one state. Maybe they had two or three warehouses if they were larger. So they would collect sales tax only in the states that they had a physical warehouse location. But if they shipped it anywhere outside of those states, they didn't. And there was no way for a state to enforce that. You know, it's not Florida's job to collect sales tax for shipments to California. It's California's job to do that. Now, every state, or I would say most every state, has on their books a law that says, if you purchase goods from another state as a consumer, you must then submit the sales tax as use tax to the state. Now, guess how many people do this? The answer is nearly zero. Occasionally, this actually happened to my mother. Occasionally, the state will get wind of a shipment, and she had like something come to her house that was on a truck, because it was somewhere declared along the way. The state of Florida knew about this purchase she made outside and sent her letters like, we know you $2,000 worth of tiles from Texas, where I was. Therefore, you owe us X amount of money in use tax. Now, that's the first I've ever heard of that. This happened like 2 years ago. But that is such a rarity. And it has nothing to do with the seller. It then falls on the consumer. But for all practical purposes, no one declares, oh, yeah, I bought all this stuff on Amazon. I bought thousands of dollars on Amazon. And tell this is what I bought. And by the way, here's the tax I owe. Now, it gets even more complicated with sales tax, because it's a state on top of, not because, but on top of the state level, there's often also a local sales tax. So if a state like Florida, for example, has a state sales tax of 6%, Dade and Broward County, which is South Florida, Dade County is Miami, Broward County is Fort Lauderdale, has an additional 1% tax. So if you, actually Dade might not have it yet. I think they're talking about it. But anyways, if you go to a store in a county, you may pay a different sales tax than in a different county, because each county can add by, and the legislature of the state defines how much they potentially can add to, an additional sales tax in order to fund local government. So the same item that's $100 in Fort Lauderdale may cost 107 here with taxes, but if you go to, I don't know, Daytona, for example, I think they're 6%. It's only $106 for the same item. So it's kind of crazy like that, you know.
It is, isn't it? It's because like I said, it's so different here in the UK. We just have a standard VAT, and that is why on everything that you buy here, unless you go to like a wholesalers, like Costco, for example, everything includes tax. You don't. What you basically see is what you pay, and collectively, no matter where you pay it. You know, if I went to Bristol, Edinburgh, London, Devon, Birmingham, no matter where I go, everything just falls under the same tax, and all the tax goes to Westminster, pretty much, HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. That's basically where all the tax money goes. Yeah. So, I mean, thinking now back to Mia's question about, she's a UK seller, and I believe she's based in the Midlands, not like it really matters, and she's selling to Amazon FBA. So she, I mean, I personally have never sold to Amazon FBA myself. Do you get to choose which warehouse you put your stuff in?
Well, so let's talk about Nexus, and then we'll get into that a little bit. So Nexus is, so what has happened now here in the United States? Amazon initially basically did all kinds of loopholes, saying we don't have to charge sales tax even if we have a warehouse. And there's been rumors that they put warehouses on top of Indian lands, which makes a whole thing. Taxes and don't get me started how screwed up the system is. Okay, but then over time they got sort of caught up, and they, I believe today in virtually all states that collect sales tax, because there's some that don't, they now collect sales tax. So if you buy some from Amazon today, pretty much most of the time they collect sales tax for products sold by Amazon, fulfilled by Amazon, not for third-party marketplace sellers, FBA. Right. So the issue now has come up of FBA creating Nexus, because, you know, the states are saying like, well, we now got Amazon and maybe a couple other people to pay sales tax, but there's all these third-party sellers. I mean, we know that Amazon themselves boast, oh, we sell more items from third-party sellers than our own, that they are not collecting sales tax on. So states bandied together over the last couple of years, some states did, and tried to come up with a scheme of saying, well, because a product is in a warehouse located, let's say in Ohio, therefore Ohio, that product creates the nexus, which means now that is property in Ohio, and therefore thereby the seller must collect sales tax for items sold from that Ohio warehouse to an Ohio resident. Not from an Ohio warehouse to a non-Ohio resident, because then we're back to that whole thing of cross-border, across state, okay? And so the whole thing is very, very confusing, and it's being fought in the courts, including Amazon saying like, we don't want to get on, eBay is also involved. We can't get into the middle of collecting sales tax and keeping track of where all these products are. That's a nightmare and a half, which they have some, you know, there's some truth to that. Yet the states are saying, well, it creates a legal nexus, and therefore. So then what the states did early in the year, and we had a story in eSeller Cafe about this, they created this amnesty program. Well, if you declared for the last 2 years how much you sold, we will waive fees, or maybe even give you a break on taxes, but definitely no penalties. And as long as you continue to show how much you do, then you'll be fine. Well, it's a voluntary program. They made it sound like it's like, oh, we came up with this, but it's not based on any legal foundation that has been proven in court to be valid. And so until this whole deal, and it is kind of moving up the courts, and we know the court system's here clogged with all kinds of things. So by the time, you know, makes it all the way to the Supreme Court, there's not going to be any clarity on this, because all the way up to that point, that Quill decision really kind of still stands. Now, what these states are trying to do is they're trying to say, well, we're going to, you know, get you off the hook for any past possibilities if you agree now. Therefore, if, they effectively, in a weird way, we're saying, if the rulings will be the laws in our favor down the road sometime, you're protected now. Well, but do you think these states are going to give you the money back if the ruling is not in their favor?
Oh, hell no.
So this is where the whole thing comes into play. And then there's also rules about some of the laws that were passed by the legislatures in various states required that you have to sell so much before this would actually kick in, and so it's all over the board. So what do? All right, practically, you don't do anything, or don't worry about it. Like Dave said, you just keep selling, and just, here's the thing: if you're located outside the United States, there's no legal method for any of these agencies to go after you. Now, the fear that some people have is, well, they could seize my property. Yes, theoretically, that's possible, but that requires a court order, that requires notification, and you will pretty much know ahead of time that this is happening, okay? So it's unlikely some bureaucrat is going to walk into an Amazon warehouse without a court order and say, oh, these items we're seizing now because this person wasn't paying tax. The legal, if that were to happen once, I mean, Amazon would fight that. I mean, they're not, Amazon is not required to provide access to their warehouses without a legal court order. So it's going to require something legal for that to happen. Secondly, because each state has different rules, it makes it really hard to do that. Now we are putting into I think in the bottom of the video a link to a company called TaxJar.
Yes, there is a link down below. It is an affiliate link, so if you do use it and sign up, and we will get percentage.
I don't even know what we get for it.
I don't even know what it is. It's something nominal, I'm sure. But if you want to help us out and you found TaxJar useful, if you use that link, we get like a little commission for it.
So TaxJar,
just in total transparency there.
Yeah, and there's other people like TaxJar out there. TaxJar, they are creating these methods now that effectively are going to collect the sales tax, tell you what you need to collect from your customers, and then remit that sales tax to various states based upon the various rules that are in place for each state. If you're really totally 100% concerned and you want to be above board to the nth degree, that would be the way to go. Realistically, I don't think it's necessary personally. And I think if you go talk to 5 CPAs, certified public accountants here in the United States, or 5 lawyers, you're going to get 5 different answers, because that's how screwed up it is.
I would bet that you would get exactly the same here in the UK. If you went to 5 accountants here and tried to get them to agree on what you should do regarding the FBA Amazon USA issue, I don't think any of them truly know what the actual state of play is here.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing. There's nothing written down in sort of legislature anywhere which sort of says, right, this is what happens. This is how this is going to work. Because by the sounds of it, the US, well, the US sales tax,
it's 50 different.
That's it. You've got 50 different rules for 50 different states.
Yeah.
And then you've got Amazon FBA warehouses in any one of those different states where they have warehouses. And this has obviously come about since e-commerce has been, obviously e-commerce is newer than any sort of previous legislation. So there's no precedent for how to handle this. Basically.
No, there isn't, and there has been talk a lot about on the federal level to create sort of an internet sales tax system, and then share those revenues, back down to the states. But then we're going back to the whole system. I don't think the states on one end would probably go along with it. On the other hand, anytime you add another bureaucracy into it that now collects money, and by the time they collect $1, the state gets 80 cents, and then they have to process it. You're just adding costs over costs into it. And I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon, especially considering that we have a pro-business Republican Congress and pro-business Republican president. Regardless what you think of everything, they're just not going to go into that direction. I just can't see it.
No, I would agree. I mean, the one thing you say about Trump is he's very pro-business.
Everything else to the side.
Ignoring everything else, he's very pro-business. So
reduce taxes and less
red tape is the big one.
Red tape, exactly. So I don't, I can't see us getting into an environment where we're going to have a system like in Europe, where there is a federal government that's going to collect these taxes and then somehow disperse them to the various states. I would also think that that could even maybe end up in a legal fight because of the way our state rights are set up here in the U.S. So who knows? You know, again, that's you wouldn't have to worry about this for years. So realistically, I think the bottom line is you just sell. Now, if your sales start to go up and you start to get to the point where you're starting to worry, and you have the profits from it to say, like, look, I need to now protect these profits because I'm really living off these sales. It's not just an add-on sale.
Yeah.
Then one possible angle to consider is to move to have your products only be in the states that don't have a sales tax. Now, if a state doesn't have a sales tax, there's no law to collect sales tax. So hence, since you're selling across the border to another state, that other state can't force the state that doesn't have a sales tax system to collect sales tax for you. It doesn't work that way, you know. And so there are basically 5 states actually have no sales tax. It's you know what? So I know it's Delaware, New Hampshire.
I'm just looking here to see if I can find a list of Amazon warehouse locations.
Yeah. So it's Alaska, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, and Oregon. The downside is, as you can tell from these 5 states, Alaska wouldn't be a good place to put your products because it's not anywhere within 2 days of delivery. And you're not going to have a whole lot of coverage in the center of the United States if you're going to take advantage of Prime. I do believe that Amazon allows you to make some judgment on where or request that your products be stored in certain locations. And I believe they charge a fee for that. So there would be a possibility of doing that. I also want to caution that I believe, at least this to be true for Alaska, I don't think it's true for the other 4, but in Alaska, there is a local option, even so there's no state sales tax, there's local counties that can add some taxation to it. That would be then treated as a sales tax. I do not believe the other 4, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, and Oregon, have that. So again, you know, there's one option. You know, you throw it into one of those, you put your products into a place that has no sales tax. Now, Delaware is also an interesting point because that's where a lot of larger corporations incorporate. If you do grow large enough, you could start a corporation in the United States, and as a foreigner, you can own a corporation in the United States. You just have to then also file taxes in the United States, which may or may not be in your best interest, depending on the tax rules. And you could do that in Delaware, and then obviously put all your product in Delaware and only ship it from Delaware. I mean, you can take this to some levels of protections if you want, but it's all those levels. Okay.
Well, there's 2 fulfillment centers in Delaware.
Yeah.
Newcastle and Middletown.
Yeah.
None in Alaska, funnily enough. And what were the other states that you said?
Montana would be one, and New Hampshire, which is probably, you know, and Oregon.
Montana, no. There is one in New Hampshire, in Nashua, and Oregon. There is one in Hillsboro. Yeah. So there are options. Whether you have the option to choose which fulfillment center you send to, I'm not sure.
Yeah. And then here, and let me also throw out the next part. I don't think this will apply to most people that try to sell in the United States from outside the U.S., is that Amazon in the U.S. uses commingled inventory. So in other words, if you're selling branded products and they get it from multiple sellers, they just mingle the inventory, which is also part of this whole issue that Amazon has. How are you going to keep track of inventory? Because we commingle inventory. So if they get 100, let's take a shoe brand, you know, they get 100 shoes, they're going to distribute them around the country so they can do their 2-day delivery. Yep. So if you, as a third marketplace seller in Florida, sell that shoe, yet your customers in California, it's going to come probably out of a California warehouse to that customer. Yet you might have sent your inventory to New Hampshire, Texas, and Kansas.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So technically, your inventory is nowhere. The products you send are not really in California.
That's a fascinating point because then it's untrackable.
Yeah, it's untrackable. How do you? So commingle is a huge problem. And I don't think commingle is going to apply to someone from outside the U.S., but within the U.S., it's an issue because that would effectively, Amazon now would have to track each piece of inventory. And as an FBA seller, you say, well, I want 2-day coverage everywhere, so now I'm going to send all my products to 8 warehouses to cover strategically the best, delivery points. So there's so much problems with all of this that's why I believe, personally, if I were in outside the U.S., have no nexus in the U.S., no corporation in the U.S., nothing,
no physical entity at all,
no physical connection. Send the products to the U.S. Amazon FBA, sell it, and don't worry about it. If it gets to a point where it becomes a large part of your business, then strongly suggest you contact multiple accountants and CPAs in different states and have a conversation, even if it costs you a few dollars, or you fly to the US and and visit. But until you reach that point, and I would say that point probably has to be at least 100,000 to 200,000 in sales or more, don't worry about it.
Yeah, and that's I'm glad you said that, because I now feel that the advice that I've been given hasn't been wrong. I've just been saying, guys, don't worry about it, and they're like, well, it's all right for you to say that. You're not running the business, and I'm like, trust me, it's if there's anything, if you've done everything that you can, or you've filled out all the forms and all the information that Amazon FBA needed from you as a UK business to sell on USA, you've done everything that they've asked of you. And therefore, it's safe to assume that you're happy to continue selling. If there was a legal requirement, like there is here in the UK, I've just recently set up a brand new Amazon account here in the UK. They wanted like a scan of the passport, a proof of address, the company number, the bank account information. It had to go through like loads of checks to make sure it wasn't being used for money laundering or anything else. You basically jump through the hoops that Amazon puts in front of you.
Yeah.
If they're not putting a hoop in front of you regarding sales tax in the USA, and that's why I've always assumed, well, if it becomes an issue, they'll let you know. Well, the IRS will probably be like, I think you owe us some money.
well, and just to say, the IRS in the United States is an Internal Revenue Service, which only has to do with profits. It's nothing to do with sales. Yeah. So that's why there's no federal agency whatsoever in the United States that collects sales tax. None. Zero. Doesn't exist. It's all on the state level. And you want to have 50 states? You really think some bureaucrat in Tallahassee, Florida, or I don't know, name another, anywhere else, Arkansas is going to sit there and trying to chase down somebody in England? Trust me, they're more worried about chasing down people in this country, okay? Because at least they have a
shot chasing your mother.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, exactly. They have a whole lot more shot at collecting some money from somebody in this country than they have sending nasty grams over to the UK or wherever. And you know what? If you're really worried about move to Greece, and then you can send them back a letter saying, you know what? I live in Greece. We don't pay tax.
We feel like it.
Yeah, we only do it when we feel like it. And you know what? It will be the truth.
What do you mean our economy is terrible?
But so, and I mean, all joking aside again, the point is, you have to look at it from a realistic point of view. There
it's is no hanging fruit, isn't it? Yeah. If you got to look at it from, if I was the government or in charge of looking after state tax, am I going to go after Bob, who lives in Birmingham, the UK, or am I going to go after Bob, who lives in Birmingham, Alabama?
Yeah, exactly. and just think about it this way. Think about the EU, the bureaucracy that it is. Okay, how long it has taken them to chase down these Luxembourg low income schemes that Google and Amazon and eBay have set up, or now in Ireland. And all it is just a whack-a-mole, and they were talking about billions of dollars. And look at how long it's taken them. If you think the U.S., any U.S. state government is any more efficient than the EU, no.
And if they're letting billions go off the hook, your 20, 30, 50 grand a year, probably probably under the radar. They're probably not.
So that's what it boils down to. Again, someone like TaxJar, if you really are really concerned, you go with something like that. But outside of that, I would say for most sellers, you're not the problem.
Yeah,
there's much bigger fish for them to fry here in the U.S.
And I think that's the thing that's probably a good point to sort of end this on or conclude on is I know we've made light of it and we've made jokes throughout this, but obviously taxation is a serious subject for any business. But as we've established through this, thanks to Richard and his insights there, is that there isn't really a rule set. There isn't really a procedure that the US can go through to collect sales tax from companies in the UK. Especially through something like Amazon FBA, where, like we said, you don't know which warehouse your item is going to. Importantly, you don't necessarily know which then state that item is going to. You're so hands off of this process because Amazon is fulfilling this for you. It's such you are so detached from the sale in a lot of ways that ultimately it's a bit of a mind fuck for the USA to try and figure out how, because of all the different 50 states and their tax rules, and you being based in the UK and your customers being based in any one of the other 50 states, it's just a mess. Yeah. So realistically, as a seller in the UK selling to the USA, you're doing your bit. You just sell your products. And like I said, if you've been through the hoops that Amazon have put up for you, like you did here in the UK, you are basically, you've done all of your responsibilities. If it turns out that somebody comes knocking on your door and says, oh, yeah, I see you've done so many sales in America, which, as Richard said, the likelihood of that is incredibly slim because how can...
It requires a court order. I mean, you have to think about this. A local revenue state agency would have to get a federal court order in order to compel Amazon, who is located in Seattle, Washington, to provide detail of every product that you own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And where it has been.
And
think
by
about
the time that's happened, we'll probably all be dead. So I keep trying to bring a little bit of humor, but the reality is don't worry about it. If you are just starting out, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And it's to the point where just you be the best seller that you can be, and you make sure your descriptions, your images, and you focus on that as the key. And you are not breaking any rules because nobody's put a barrier up to stop you from selling. Nobody said, oh, you need to fill this in or you need to submit this. No, if you are able to sell in the USA, you've not broken any rules. Right. If they want to charge you tax, they come to you like HMRC does in the UK. As soon as you set up a business, they go, right, give us your information because this is how you're going to pay tax.
Right.
If that doesn't happen, then it's not your responsibility to go to them. It's for them to tell you how much tax you pay because you cannot be expected to do that calculation when you're not even a native in the country. So, as Richard said, thank you so much again, Richard, for doing this because I've learned a lot myself. I mean, I had a brief idea about how it all works, but this has been fascinating for me. And it might have been boring to anyone watching this who's not involved in selling into America, but hopefully for those who are, this has been really insightful. And ultimately, like Richard said, if you're doing 5 up to 6 figures a year in the USA, chances are the USA has got bigger fish to fry. And as long as if Amazon asks you for information, provide them information. You're not breaking the law. But if they don't ask you for information and you don't provide information, you're not breaking the law either. You're a seller at the end of the day. And if you are still worried or you still want further advice, then the best advice that we can give you is to check out the guys at TaxJar, as we mentioned. There is a link down below. It is an affiliate link, but they will be able to give you advice on where the state of play lies. Or alternatively to that, just find some independent either accountants here in the UK or what do you call them in the US, Rich?
CPAs.
CPAs,
certified public accountant.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're going to talk with somebody in the United States, I would suggest you talk with somebody who has CPA in their title.
Okay.
Because that means they're real. I mean, they're good accountants.
Do they have to do CPAs, like a test or something to get?
Yeah. But it's more of a professional testing, and so you're going to pay more for CPA, but they also are going to be more up to date on things. So
yeah, by all means, if you are worried, if you are doing serious numbers, and like Richard said, if this is becoming a main part of your business, then
and I'll say this, I mean, and not to drag this on, if you're doing really serious numbers, you're probably going to get into a situation where at some point you're going to think about maybe I ought to have just a satellite
warehouse there anyway. Yeah,
there anyway, because it might be just cheaper to send, especially if you're sourcing from China someplace, to send the stuff directly from China to the U.S. versus going through the UK and then to the U.S. You know, there's so many other things that come into play if you grow your business to a scale where this right now is not an issue. Yes, it can become an issue down the road, but most sellers that I think we deal with on a daily basis aren't going to be in anywhere near the level that is going to be on the radar screen. You know? Yeah. And the only way you're going to end up on a quote unquote radar screen, or you're going to end up having to do something, is if somehow through the Supreme Court or through other legal action or legislature action on the federal level, Amazon and others get forced to become tax collectors.
I don't see that happening.
And let me tell you, I would say the lawyers at Amazon and eBay and everybody else are going to sit there and
they're going to fight
pretty big hammers, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's been talk that that's what the Australian government wanted the marketplaces to do in Australia. Yeah. That basically got pushed out at least for another year. And basically eBay said if they make that law, we will leave Australia.
Yeah.
That's how much they are not willing to start becoming tax collectors.
And just to give you a little small other insight, our Supreme Court right now, especially with Trump possibly having another Supreme Court pick, is going to be a Republican pro-business style Supreme Court. Absolutely. So they're going to be less likely to weigh in favor of infringing on state rights, which is a big part of all of this conversation.
Yeah,
I think if they're gonna even take this up, my personal opinion is under the current makeup, they would probably just say, "Yeah, Quill stands as is. Congress needs to change it." You know, and I don't. So we're talking years. We're talking.
So, literally, Mia, if you're watching this, But great question. Like I said, you're not the only one to have asked me this question. And hopefully that sort of put you mind at ease a little bit. I know so many sellers who sell to the USA and they don't pay any tax in the USA because they don't know how to. Nobody's come and told them how to, basically. Right. So, like I said, don't worry about it. Like I said, until you get crazy big and you start getting into good problem territory and start thinking, oh, maybe I should have my own warehouse there, and then that's a very different story.
Yeah, exactly.
But it does become easier because you're based in one location. So, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so honestly, for anyone doing this in the UK, currently signing up to the USA, just do everything that you are asked to do. And if, like I said, if no one's asking you to pay USA tax, you can't pay USA tax.
Yeah, very simple.
So with that said, sorry, go on, Rich.
There's no criminality involved in any of this because you know.
Yeah, you can't break a law which doesn't exist, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And like Richard said, if there's no external revenue collection service, then you know what can you do? The proponents for it they're just not there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, me as a Florida resident and having a Florida business, I am personally liable for sales tax collection. So if I run a business, I can be held personally liable to make sure to collect that tax. So even the corporate rail here doesn't help me. None of this exists for an outside seller.
Yeah, and that's it. That is the core of the matter. The legislature just isn't there. The e-commerce is too new for the USA sort of laws regarding this. Right. The cross-border trade is too new for this to have been been put into place. Yeah. So yeah, Richard, thank you so much for clarifying some of this for me. I'm sure my viewers will be very appreciative as well. If you have any questions as well watching this, please leave them down below in the comment section, and anything that I personally cannot answer, I will bother Richard. I'm just like, Richard, answer this. Answer this one.
Okay, I think we'll make this into a story on eSeller Cafe.
Yeah, I think so. I think we should.
This one really kind of fits into the.
It does.
If
Mia's having this problem, and a couple of other people I've spoken to within the past few weeks are having this problem,
so you'll see
people having these questions. Yeah. But hopefully, if we can put them. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We can link this video up as well. So again, Richard, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. Thank you to you watching this video as well. Hopefully you found it useful or beneficial to you and your business. If you have, leave a like, rating, subscribe if you are new. There's new content most days of the week. At some point the videos come up. But with that said, thank you so much. And thank you again to Richard. And we'll catch you again either over on eSell Cafe or in my next video. I'll see you then.
Bye-bye.